evening, everyone, and welcome to the Undisputed Heavyweight Champion of the World show made for the fans by a fan. I am your host, as always, Richard Tiemann. This is Football and Nonsense. Happy Wednesday to all of you. Happy Hump Day, however you celebrate the midst of the week. I apologize that we did not have a show last night. As some of you saw my tweet, there was what turned out to be minor family emergency. In fact, not really emergency at all. It was more of a miscommunication, but hey, you know, those kinds of things happen. That's life. Here we are on Wednesday. Do want to thank you all for reaching out. I do really appreciate it. It makes me feel loved. It makes me feel special. So thank you again. Hopefully we don't have too many more of those, you know, because it had been a while, like so long that I can't honestly remember the last time that I had to cancel a show last minute. So I'm glad that it's not a trend. I'm glad that it's not a thing where it's like, oh man, that first Tuesday in November, without fail, he has to cancel. No, I don't think it's anything like that. So it's good. It's good, though, that we've been able to keep up with 3 days a week. And, of course, there was a few times where I told you guys well in advance that I wasn't having a show the next night. And a lot of those were coming off of the tail end of a long weekend. During the tour, the fan show tour, I was exhausted. I couldn't do it. So until I have like a suitable substitute here, it's on my schedule, which is fine. You guys understand, you know, life happens. As Jeff Goldblum would say, life finds a way. So here we are, Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about because it was quite the week in sports. It really, really was. So without further ado or any more delay, let's go ahead and get to those headlines. And, of course, headlines are brought to you by MyBookie.ag. Sign up and register today and use promo code TheFanShow, and you can get up to a 50% bonus back where you bet matters. So take your online betting and gambling action to the good folks at MyBookie.ag. I trust them. You should, too. And, of course, if you feel like you're the Nostradamus of the NFL, NHL, or NBA, since we have all three going on right now, then prove it. Go to MyBookie.ag and lay down some cash on your pick. They don't even have to win. They just have to cover the spread. You can bet on or against your team. Your team doesn't even have to be involved. There's so many ways that you can bet. And, of course, if you're not in the mood to bet on something sports ball, well, then you can take your hard-earned cash over to the craps or the virtual blackjack tables and try your hand at that. But MyBookie.ag is the place to do it. Safe, secure. They are built on the 3 R's: reliability, reputation, and really fast payouts. Check out MyBookie.ag today. And, of course, although I'm not a big baseball guy, you know this. This does not come as a surprise to you, Fan Nation. But Roy Halladay was tragically killed in a plane crash, so thoughts and prayers with his family. It's moments like that I wish I was more into something, obviously baseball right now over this, because just hearing what people have had to say about him and his time with the Toronto Blue Jays really is amazing. And it's so sad because it's something that the person who has passed will never hear. Now, of course, the afterlife is a huge mystery. What happens, what you can hear, see, do, what have you. But, you know, until proved otherwise, we don't know that they get to hear anything said. So I've always said that there's no greater irony than a funeral, because it's the nicest thing said about a person that they'll never hear. But hopefully the people that are baseball fans and did watch his career, got to enjoy his career, and did share their appreciation for a player of his caliber. So, again, thoughts and prayers to the folks that are being affected by this, of course, the baseball world. But, you know, these tragedies happen. You don't want them to, but they do know nonetheless. It makes you appreciate life a little bit more. In other sports news, of course, there was, hope you guys enjoyed the fights. Oh, and there was a UFC main event, too. I don't know what was in the water for the NFL, man. There was some fights. There's been some suspensions. AJ Green, clearly a big GSP fan, because the next day he was applying a rear naked choke on Ramsey of the of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he shoves him, and then AJ Green decides to get up. And it's like he paused as if he was thinking, should I? Yeah, I'm gonna. And then he just jumped on him and just rear naked choke, brought him to the ground. And you just go, wow. Because these things happen, right? These guys get into shoving contests, but you rarely see like a guy take off his helmet and pummel a guy like Andre. Who was it that did that for the Texans? Yeah. So he did it, and he just pummeled the guy. And it just blows your mind because usually when the pushing and shoving escalates, there's enough people in that pile that have broken it up, referees, coaches, whatever. But sometimes there's these isolated incidents. And then Mike Evans, out of nowhere, like a friggin' RKO, just takes down the guy that shoved Jameis because Jameis Winston was being stupid and poking his finger like through his helmet's hole on his ear or whatever he was doing. And Mike Evans just comes out of nowhere and just flattens the guy. And so he's got a suspension. AJ Green has got a suspension. There were multiple ejections. The Niners and Cardinals game, there was a bunch of ejections too. And that one, as upset as I was to see players get ejected, I also understand from watching that game start to finish why there was such high tensions, because the referees weren't throwing the flag for hits to the head. They just weren't. Beathard had gotten a helmet to the head 3 times before that play, and then that one was blatantly obvious, and the crowd, you could hear it. They were just like, what the hell? So they finally threw the flag, but the teams at that point had had enough. So sometimes, we talk about how can we limit penalties in the NFL. Well, it's not a matter of limiting penalties, although there are a lot. My feeling on the matter is that we need to start flagging stuff that's freaking worth flagging, okay? And I know that I made the argument last year that when it came to calls like holding, that the play should just be whistled dead because there's no point in watching a play run its course if it's just going to get called back. You can subject a player to further injury if there's a hold by the offensive lineman and the guy takes off for 75 yards, and I understand that they don't want to have that happen in case there was a mistake. Oh my God, referees making mistakes? Color me shocked. But first, they'd never admit to a mistake like that during a game. They'll tell you afterwards. But 2, people want them to be able to decline penalties like that. I don't really think there's a whole lot of situations that a guy's going to decline a hold on a big run play, or on a big offensive play if he's the defense. I don't foresee it to happen. So my theory is, why don't we emphasize, 1, the penalties that matter, and 2, at the same time, we can also show that we give 2 shits about player safety. So hits to the head, I understand a lot of them are by accident and that in real time they look very different than they do in slow. But still, I would prefer to see a guy get flagged 3 times in a game for helmet to helmet, whether it was accidental or intentional, than to see those not get flagged, but instead the guy is calling for offensive PI because he extended his arm, or, a block in the back on the kickoff. God knows we see those enough. So that's my thing is, if you're going to call something, make it worth it at least, right? So that pretty much sums up the weekend in the NFL. I mean, the Eagles are still the hottest team in the NFL right now. They won again, and the standings, oh boy, they are 8-1. The Cowboys 5-3. Redskins are 4-4 after a huge win in Seattle. It seems like everyone but the Giants came off of a huge win, must win in that division, must win for their season in that division, and that was the NFC East. Of course, the Eagles control their own destiny at this point. They're 8-1. They win another one, they're guaranteed a winning season, and they keep the distance with the Cowboys and the Redskins. Redskins need every win they can get from here on out, and the Cowboys, I'm going to say they need every win they can get from here on out as well. You're behind 3 games, and I know that the Eagles have yet to go, or is it? Yeah, the Eagles have yet to go on their bye week, but the Cowboys, man, they've won 3 in a row, but it's been really close. And the Kansas City Chiefs win this weekend, that was a huge win for them. But I'm just not sold on this team yet. The Eagles look like the team to beat. But, of course, every season we see a team that sits, at whatever, 7, 8, 9-1, and they look like the team to beat, and they're not. But the Eagles, it feels like they're clicking on both sides of the ball. The Redskins, though, doing what few teams have ever done, that some quarterbacks have never done, and that is beat Seattle. Russell Wilson's Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, 17-14, and you can point the finger where you want, but Blair Walsh, who was 0 for 3 on field goals, not extra points, field goals in the first half, not even like 60-yarders either. Like, we're talking makeable field goals. Don't think you can blame the weather because it wasn't really raining, even though it is Seattle. But still, if you're a kicker in Seattle, like, you should be able to make kicks in the rain. That's just kind of a given. Like, Mason Crosby, he doesn't say, well, it was really cold in Lambeau. That's not his excuse. So, Blair Walsh, 0 for 3. And the funny thing is that, people harp on kickers a lot. And they're people too, right? That's the argument, is that don't harp on kickers so much because they're people too. And they are. But they have one job to do in football. They don't sometimes pass, they don't sometimes receive, unless it's like a fake or whatever, but that's a 1 in 50? Sure, they can punt on occasion, but their job is that they will kick off and that they will kick the field goals. And when they don't do that, it leaves you scratching your head, especially a tenured kicker that we're at this point in the season where it's not like they're on a new team, they're not in new conditions, they've gotten all of that out of the way, and they go 0 for 3. The beautiful thing about this whole situation is that 0 for 3, if he makes 1 of 3, I guess theoretically it's a tie game. Redskins won 17-14. So if he makes 1, it's a tie game. We go to overtime. Who knows what the outcome is then? If he makes 2 out of 3, could have won the game. 3 out of 3, definitely won the game. So we don't even expect kickers to be perfect. We just expect them not to suck. So Blair Walsh, my oh my, he's something, isn't he? So San Francisco and Niners, that's right, they are 0-9 after losing. They lost worse to Drew Stanton and the Arizona Cardinals than they did to the Carson Palmer Arizona Cardinals. That's sad. But then again, more dropped passes than any team in the NFL right now, and more injuries than any team in the NFL right now. And it's not even like injuries to star players. Like, who's the star player on the 49ers right now? Really? Bowman? He plays for the Raiders now. So they have a lot of injuries. CJ Beathard, I don't envy him. He's a tackling dummy. And I love when I get into Twitter arguments with people that say that someone is terrible when there's just not enough there to say that they're terrible. Somebody on Twitter decides to tweet, CJ Beathard is terrible. And I'm like, really? Like, I get that he's the quarterback for my team, but I feel like there's several other examples of where this is clearly, what are you doing? Because he's a rookie quarterback, okay? So there's that. He started his 4th game that day, okay? So sample size, small. 4th game that he had started in the NFL was that game. And on top of that, he's got to be behind one of the worst lines in football because he's on an injury-plagued team that happens to be probably the worst team in the NFL right now. And the Browns are 0-9 too, or 0-8. They had a bye week. It's still 0-9. So here's this person that says CJ Beathard is terrible, and it's like, why? Like, what have you seen that makes you believe that that's an accurate assessment? You have a small sample size. If you want to look at the grand scheme of things, that's a quarter of an NFL season, 4 games. He came into it after the start, which they had a full healthy roster. He hasn't gotten to play quarterback on a team that was 100% because they got rid of Bowman. And Staley was out this game. He's one of their more tenured offensive line guys, but all of his receivers are gone, Pierre Garçon. So it's only gotten worse since he took over as far as the injuries go. He gets pressured. He gets sacked. His receivers drop the ball constantly. They lead the league in dropped passes. And he's a rookie on an 0-9 team. And you're going to sit there and try to argue that you've seen enough to justify that you believe he's not just not good and not just bad, but terrible. That's the word that you're going to choose. Okay. Yeah, you do that. We'll see how far you get. Some people just baffle me, man, I tell you. We did not get to see Tom Brady in action. We did not get to see the Vikings in action. Both of those teams lead their respective conferences. Vikings at 6-2, and of course Patriots at 6-2. We did, however, get to see the Packers and the Lions, both at 4-4 now. Lions with a rare win in Lambeau Field. My guest tonight, Darrell Lee Owens of Legacy Makers Sports Network. He will be on. We're going to talk about just that, so I'll save that for a little later. And then the Saints, 6-2. They have won 6 straight now. Panthers won again, but man, Cam Newton, he referenced the Titanic. Why, I don't know. But what better reference than a guy who continually sinks at every press conference he has than Cam Newton? So maybe Cam Newton is the Titanic of press conferences in the NFL. The Rams, oh man, they embarrassed the Giants. Ooh, that was bad. So everybody laughed earlier on in the season when I said it was my feeling that Shanahan would have the better head coaching career than McVay because McVay inherited a playoff caliber team. And people laughed at me, like not just like, haha, that's a good one. Like they full on said, this dude is crazy. I'm pretty sure I got unfollowed a few times. And people just saying, like, you don't know anything that you're talking about. They're 6-2. Okay? They lead the division by a game right now over the Seahawks. And it is going to be a race to the finish. This team, whether it be division, title, or wild card, unless there's a complete collapse right now, this team is going to be in the playoffs. So, hey, who's laughing now? Now, McVay, very good coach. I do believe he has done wonders for that offense. But this was a team that I believe 3-1, 4-1 at the start of the season last year, and then got hit with the injury bug hard. And you guys are going to sit there and tell me that this wasn't a playoff caliber team that McVay inherited. Okay, yeah. Because, 6-2. Yeah. Got it. I do think it's funny, and there's majority of Fan Nation, I'm not talking to you, the off chance that someone that knows who they are in regard to this that happens to be listening. I don't know why they'd be listening, but just to get this off my chest. When I'm right about something, crickets. And when I'm wrong about something, everybody's got to point it out to me. Good thing is, though, is that I'm a lot more right than I am wrong, especially this season. So it's been pretty quiet out there. There was UFC fight, UFC 217, one of the best cards out there, and I didn't see it. And I feel indifferent about it because I knew that the fans that were diehards were going to watch it. I knew that the fans that would appreciate what happened would watch it. And I've seen a lot of UFC fights. I have. And I know GSP is without a doubt one of the greatest of all time. I think he proved that he is the greatest of all time. Now, of course, time hasn't ended yet. So greatest of all time is, of course, subject to your generation, your opinions, your thoughts. But GSP had a 4-year kind of a hiatus that he took off, that he retired. Comes back, gets a title shot, blood dripping down his face. He pummels the guy. You could see the ref was about to wave it off and you'd have yourself a TKO. But because of the magnitude of this fight, the ref clearly was begging and pleading that Bisping defend himself while he's getting pummeled into the mat and into the cage. And then he gets kind of up and out of it, and then GSP takes him down, rear naked choke, and it is all over. If that doesn't scream the greatest of all time, I don't know what does. John Jones? No, not a chance. GSP? Yeah, okay, GOAT, right there. And TJ Dillinger, he did fantastic job against Cody Carhart. I forget how you say his last name, but... And the thing is, I liked Cody. I thought it was funny when he would dance in the ring or in the octagon. And he did that this fight. I saw the highlights. But man, he got caught. And he paid for it. 3 title changes. UFC 217. People are saying it was the best card of the year. Good. The UFC needed it. Rich Bauer of Team Fan Show, he'll do some write-ups for WWE and UFC, and he said that the UFC was in a decline, especially because so much effort got put into that McGregor-Mayweather fight. What's next for GSP? I jokingly said McGregor, and people laughed at that, like, haha, good one. That is a money fight, though, because McGregor has fought at 185 before, but I don't think it'll happen. I think McGregor's got like one more good fight in him. Hopefully it's a title defense, but he doesn't really have anything left to do or prove now at this point. And people will say that Conor McGregor is the greatest of all time, but I think he was great in the sense that Ali was great. He could talk and he could fight. And I think Ali probably backed it up more times than McGregor did, but he is entertainment. Like, he is what you want in the world of hand-to-hand combat, Conor McGregor. GSP is who a fighter's fan wants to be the face of the UFC or of mixed martial arts. A guy that doesn't say a lot but goes out and talks with his fists. and he has a lot to say when it comes to that. But for the average fan, Conor McGregor is the guy that you want. And I think that's because WWE has come so much to the forefront of sports and entertainment. It's blended into the world of pop culture and sports, where we see it more. It's gotten more exposure than what we're used to. I think that if that didn't happen, you're probably still looking, the average fan would like to see a guy that would just shut up and go fight like GSP does. But because of what we've been conditioned to, which is the trash talker that goes out there and does what he does, we like Conor. And that's understandable. WWE, there was a title change last night for the first time in WWE history, or was it the first time in 54 years? I saw 54 years somewhere, but I forget if we're talking like when they say first time in the Super Bowl era. So anyway, first time in a very long time, the title, WWE Championship, changed hands last night in Manchester, overseas. Yeah, this was the first time that had happened. And it was AJ Styles over Jinder Mahal. Thank God that Jinder... I mean, he gets a rematch, right? He could win it again. His career's not over. But man, that was painful because AJ is so good. And he has been so good. He's been healthy. So it's like, strike while the iron is hot, man. Put that belt around that man's waist. And what's funny is that, it got spoiled for me. And I'm a little upset about that because I honestly can't tell you the last time that as a wrestling fan, I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, and I jumped out of my seat and cheered. And I wanted that to be the next time that AJ Styles won the title because I had started to doubt if they were going to do it again. And then they go and do it again, and it's at an event that's being pre-taped and will be aired later. It's not even a pay-per-view, and they spoil it hours before. And I feel robbed. The last time I legitimately jumped out of my seat at the conclusion of a match was The Rock versus John Cena, WrestleMania 28. I was there in attendance, and it was that match that nobody really knew who was going to win that because there was plenty of reason for both to win. And The Rock got the W, and oh man, I screamed, I cheered. It was great. But there's been times that I've been disappointed. Shawn Michaels against John Cena for the WWE title. That one, I thought for sure Shawn Michaels was going to win. I got so excited and ready, and then he didn't, and then I was pissed. But you, as a fan, as you get older and as you start to get conditioned to the way that the world works for your respective source of sports or entertainment, those moments become far and fewer between. When you're a little kid, though, it's like every pay-per-view you're jumping and cheering because you really don't know how it works. But as an adult, you start to catch on, and that's a little bit more disappointing. So those moments that WWE makes you believe that what you saw, what like you really didn't know, and that it was authentic, and yeah, that you eat those up. So congrats to AJ Styles. He will compete against Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series. John Cena, 5th member of Team SmackDown Live, was announced today. So they've done quite the shakeup. Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins will no longer be the tag team for the tag team titles on the Raw side to go up against the Usos, but the Usos do have a match, I believe, to see if they will be the ones. And I don't like it when they get this close because I feel like you're not leaving a whole lot for story. And they really went all out for the Jinder and Lesnar thing, and now that won't happen. So you've got a week to paint this Lesnar-Styles picture, and it just seems like you thought that you could pull it off, and then you realized at the last minute that you couldn't, so you hit the eject button, and now you've got this thing, which in the ring it will be great, but the build-up will be not so much. So that will about do it for the world of sports. My St. Louis Blues are off to the best start in their franchise's history at 12-3-1. Congrats to them. And the Vegas Knights are still doing very well. And we do have Thursday Night Football coming up tomorrow night after the show. That will be the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. Like I said, Seahawks lose in Seattle to the Redskins, but we're going to talk some more football after this quick commercial break. Darrell Owens of Legacy Makers Sports Network will be my guest, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of The Fan Show after this.
This is The Sheet.
Gets me all revved up. My face is now red. My ears are just freaking boiling.
He's so raw that Skype hates him.
Yeah, he had 51 touchdowns. 4,900 total yards.
I know y'all like that, but I got to run. And only in Alabama that could happen, I have to say.
They're so good, man. They would win the Big Ten if they were in the Big Ten. You could be doing something vision-based in front of you and reach down and grab a handful of insane goodness.
Give it to him. Kudos. I'm clapping like a golfer. Very good, Johnny. I'm proud of you.
Wow. You guys agree on something again? I'm very impressed. Have you ever had a bad week? You know, just you walk outside, step in a puddle, like right when you walk outside. I mean, how's there a puddle right outside the house? Or you stand on the curb and somebody drives by and splashes water up on you? Or it's just raining on you, not anyone else?
I will tell you, before you go any further, I cannot hear Chad when he speaks.
Good. You're listening to The Sheet, man. I don't really know what we're doing.
Every Saturday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. right here on WBLZ Sports.
Whether it be your industrial, commercial, or residential needs, Gen Service is the electrical contractor for you. The Gen Service team has the expertise, commitment, and educational years to help you solve all your electrical concerns. They have you in their best interest with helpful suggestions to accommodate your every want. Give them a call, no matter the size of the job, at 740-438-7173. Mention WBLZ Sports, and you'll get a discount. That's Gen Service, 740-438-7173.
This is Nick Ficarelli, the mad scientist of sports. Join me and Dr. D, Derek Jones, live every Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, for the Mad Scientist Sports Lab. The big intellect, the experiments on the chalkboard, and the guest subjects will be rolling in. Mad Scientist Sports Lab, only on WBLZ Sports, where we got balls.
Doug Pepper Painting and Pressure Washing. He has over 30 years of painting experience. He's interior, exterior, commercial or residential. Doug Pepper covers it all. Is your house looking ugh? We'll call on Doug. Doug Pepper Painting and Pressure Washing. 404-966-3361. Mention WBLZ Sports and get a special We've Got Balls discount. That's Doug Pepper Painting and Pressure Washing. 404-966-3361.
Check out Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL legends live on. We bring you 5 NFL legends every week, sharing their stories and insights, plus our spotlight on the positive. Hear which players are doing great things in their communities. Now on WBLZ Sports Talk Radio and WBLZSports.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me now, making his debut on the Fan Show, is one half of the Legacy Makers Sports Podcast. It is Darrell Lee Owens. How you doing today, Darrell?
What is up, Rich, man? How you doing, brother?
I am doing swell. Thank you for asking. I appreciate you taking the time to join the show today. Big fan of your work and you guys over there at Legacy, so I'm glad to see that things are going well for you guys.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I wanted to bring you on because there's been... It seems kind of like it was a big weekend in sports all around, but the NFL, this is point in time where, because we've started to see the good teams and the great teams kind of separate from each other, and then a few teams have kind of wrapped up their season and now they're planning for the future, this is where we'll start to hear a lot of rumors and a lot of potential storylines that will carry us into the postseason and then, of course, the offseason. And one of those storylines is what quarterbacks will be with new teams next season. And the name that came up yesterday really surprised me, and that is Aaron Rodgers, because of that just... I don't want to say it was a lack of effort on their part. They are working with Brett Hundley as their quarterback, but a lot of people have said, Colin Cowherd himself, that Aaron Rodgers is in one of those relationships where he does 75% of the work and then the team does 25%, and you can't really have a successful career if you're doing all the heavy lifting. You're a Packers fan. What are your thoughts on if Aaron will be a Packer next season?
That's very interesting. Probably the first time I've heard of it. But what I will say is this, Aaron Rodgers is that franchise. And I think that, the same thing happened with Brett Favre when Brett Favre was on his way out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the Packers organization itself wasn't giving Brett the tools to try to win another Super Bowl championship. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's something that happens. I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't. But it wouldn't surprise me because, as a Packers fan, I've been down this path before. The unfortunate thing, though, is I like what I've seen in Hundley. I know a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. He hasn't played horrible. It's just I think he's still getting used to being the main guy. And I think if you really look at it, it's the defense that's been the struggle for the Packers this year. But I will say, and overall, I don't think it'll happen right away. It could be something that maybe 2 to 3 years down the road. But if it does happen, it's nothing but Green Bay's fault. They haven't given him the pieces to win. They haven't given him, at least all the pieces that he needs to truly win. They haven't given him a stable defense. And I think those things have hurt, his legacy, no pun intended, to a point, because it's unfair to him that they haven't been giving him the tools to win.
And you're right. Brett Hundley, one game, it was against the Detroit Lions, and it was Monday Night Football at home. And, I mean, technically, I guess that was his second start. But this was coming fresh off of a bye week, their chance to really sort of cater a system or a game plan around his particular skill set. And I think that the only thing that would have made Green Bay favored in that game would have been if Aaron Rodgers was playing, because he is the difference maker. And the Lions have been, a touchdown away from being a very different record than they are right now, and they're still a winning record. So this is a different Lions team than what the Green Bay Packers have spent beating up on the last several seasons. So when it comes to looking around the league and these quarterbacks, when you enter the league and you sign that first long-term contract, so most of the time a player will go and they will, establish their roots in that city. We saw Brett do it in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers has done it. Some players, if they're on a contract where they could see themselves playing for a different team later, they'll go and get like a second home if they have the money for it, or they'll just live with the team during the season. Rodgers lives in Green Bay. Like, he's a Green Bay guy, but you have to start thinking about, like, what means more to him. Does he want to be the only attraction for Green Bay Packers fans? Not that they're the kind of fan base that's only going to go because one player is there. I mean, their season tickets are sold out for 30 years, and they've never been that kind of fan base before. But Aaron Rodgers isn't exactly what people would consider a team-first guy. So would you put it past him to at least consider his options at the end of this season?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. It's one of those things that, he's a competitor at heart. I mean, I think he loves the green and gold. Like you said, he lives there, but I think, first and foremost, he wants people to look at him and say, man, Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest of all time. if not the greatest of all time. And in some, in some people's eyes, I'm not going to say I'm going that far just yet. But what I will say is that I think that it wouldn't surprise me, to see him, maybe start to think about it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers will be 34 December the 2nd. December babies in the building. Whoop, whoop. And I will say, he's going to start to think about it. I mean, Brady's in his 40s, and Brady has 5 championships. And people always compare them to, and Aaron has been to 1 Super Bowl and has fallen short in 2 NFC championship games, not to count the playoff games where they got embarrassed with the Giants, and also a 49ers game that they played the 49ers twice, I believe, and struggles. I don't think that the Packers as an organization realize what they're doing, because if you go and look at it long term, yes, I've been a Packers fan since I was 7. I've only seen 3 losing seasons since being a fan. And I've been a fan since 1991. I've seen 3 losing seasons. I haven't seen it often. And so for me, it's kind of hard to get adjusted to because you're so used to winning. So I think that if they don't figure something out soon, they could lose them.
Yeah, it would be a tough pill for me to swallow to think that it would take just a losing season for Green Bay to lose fans. But I do know several Green Bay fans that are very much, they'd rather have Rodgers over McCarthy. And here, as a 49ers fan, I'm thinking with all the trouble we've had with head coaches over the last 4 years, that we would be more than happy to take a guy with McCarthy's resume. Now, of course, you enter the argument like so many people in Foxborough and those Patriots fans do, where it's like, would Belichick be what he is without Brady, or would Brady be what he is without Belichick? You have that same argument, over on the NFC side with McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. I'm more inclined to say Aaron Rodgers has made that team because every time that he's not out there on the offense, Green Bay has a tendency to struggle and or lose, and that's on McCarthy. Where with Belichick, it doesn't matter who's out there, if it's Garoppolo, Brissett, hell, Hoyer at this point, but we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. So get rid of McCarthy or let Aaron Rodgers go. If Green Bay had their way, I feel like they would probably want to keep Rodgers. What is it about McCarthy that the people don't like?
I think, as a fan, I think the biggest thing about McCarthy has been his play calling for me, it's always been his play calling when the Packers have the lead. When Aaron Rodgers first got there and they were rocking and rolling, Green Bay would have these monstrous leads. It hasn't been until the last 2 or 3 years where he's been more of a comeback type of quarterback, because they pretty much have either gotten themselves down in certain situations or have, that he had all of this magic that he's been doing in the last 2 minutes just really started happening. Aaron Rodgers, for the first 4 or 5 years of his career, was out here dominating. And then what happened is that's when McCarthy would say, all right, let's start running the ball. And he would take the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. And there was many a times where, there was one game against Atlanta. We were up 27-3. And, he starts running the ball in the second half. And it's pretty much all he did in the second half. And Atlanta almost came back and won that game. I personally went to my first Lambeau game last year against Detroit. And at that game, Green Bay's up 30-3 at the half. And the Packers scored 3 points in the second half because they tried to run the ball. And Detroit came back and almost won the game. I think the problem with McCarthy is his play calling is starting to become a little bit more predictable. The real issue is Don Capers. He has to go. I think personally, you look and see that there's some talent on that Green Bay defense. I just think it's time to mix it up. The 3-4 has not worked for the Packers. Even the year we won the Super Bowl, it was a struggle. But we were able to pull it off, when we won the Super Bowl about 7 years ago. So you look at it, for me, I think it's time for at least a change on defense before we decide to make that move with McCarthy.
Yeah, and I feel you there when it comes to the differences between offenses and defenses, because I've always said that, the way that you can tell if your team has become either a championship team or just a great team is when you can go from naming all the guys on the offense to naming all the guys on the defense. If you can name all the guys on the defense, you have a championship team. If you can only name all the guys on the offense, you have a great team, but I don't know if it's a championship caliber team. And that year that San Francisco went to the Super Bowl, I can name you every single one of those guys on that defensive side. Not to say that their offense wasn't really good then. I mean, they had Crabtree, Vernon Davis, and Frank Gore, but at the same time, it was the defense that was keeping them in those games and making sure that they lasted all 4 quarters. And Green Bay used to have that. You could name all the guys on that Green Bay defense during those, deep playoff and championship years. So whatever the case may be, Rodgers, I don't believe he'll go anywhere because he's become, a Green Bay kind of guy. But at the same time, I wouldn't put it past him to at least consider his other options. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of rumors surface should the Packers continue to lose without him at quarterback. But as far as the other quarterbacks in question, Andrew Luck, of course, he is done for the season. He didn't even take a snap this year. Some people think he may not even play again because of just the complexity of this injury and what's going on with his shoulder. And then the third quarterback is Kirk Cousins. And of course, with Garoppolo landing in San Francisco, how does that change things? Do you think either of these quarterbacks will be on a different team next season? Will Luck play again at all? Like, what are your thoughts right now looking at this point in the NFL season?
Well, the quarterback situation is going to be very interesting in the offseason. I think, the draft itself is loaded, in my opinion, with some really good QBs. So that's going to play into it as well. If I had to say, I think Andrew Luck may be the one that most definitely would. There's a strong chance he could be on the move. It just seems like Indianapolis, from a few years ago, ever since they've had Deflategate, the Indianapolis Colts have just not been the same team. Every year they were making progress. They went from wild card playoff to divisional playoff to AFC championship game in just a 3-year span. And then all of a sudden you see a steady decline where they can't even, as soon as they paid Andrew Luck all that money, it seems like the offensive line started to fall apart. They haven't had a real running game. They haven't had this. I would not be surprised if you see an Andrew Luck, and I'll throw a few teams out there that I think will be a good fit for him. I think Arizona would be a good spot for him. They have a lot of great pieces out there in Arizona that I think that could really do some, pretty good things. And then you look at a team like Jacksonville. Even though Bortles is starting to play well, it really depends on how he finishes the season. Jacksonville could be a place of interest. It'll be interesting for Luck to see, where he could possibly land. The whole Garoppolo and Cousins situation is very interesting. Things came through the other day saying that the 49ers traded for Garoppolo to eventually use him for trade bait. But me personally, I felt last year, my 3rd episode on my podcast, I actually did something where we talked about, we talked about how can we fix the 49ers. And one of my solutions was go get a guy like a Garoppolo, a veteran that could get, things started in the right spot. But personally, I don't know if Cousins is going to go there. I think people always say, he's going to go there. I don't think he's going to go there because, like I said, you look at a team like Jacksonville, you look at a team like Arizona. I think that between Luck and Cousins, they could end up in one of those two places.
Yeah, and you look at the way that things have changed since all that talk, and what's funny to me is that Kirk Cousins and the Washington Redskins, to me, remind me of that first long-distance relationship you get into where one of you is making more effort than the other, as far as one of you is doing all the driving on the weekend to go and visit the other, and you're making sure that you do that last goodnight phone call, but the other just, they're getting too caught up and too busy and whatever else is going on, and that's what's happening with Kirk Cousins and the Redskins, is that I feel like he genuinely wants to be there, even if it's not there as in Washington. I feel like he just wants to be the guy. He wants to be the face of your franchise. He wants to get paid per what he feels he's worth, which as a franchise quarterback is probably worth quite a bit right now. And the Redskins just sort of treat him like, yeah, but could we get somebody better? And it's that what if that is dragging this whole thing out. So if they do pay him, I don't know if it'll be what he wanted, but this Garoppolo thing throws a wrench into that because there's going to be several teams that are in the market for a good quarterback next year.
Right.
But I don't know if, depending on how the Redskins finish this season, if Kirk Cousins is going to be in that top 3 discussion because he doesn't have a relationship with anybody else like he did with Shanahan. So that's got to be a cause for concern for him. With luck, yeah, Arizona was the first team that came to mind. It's funny that you said that because a lot of people believe Palmer has played his last down as a Cardinal, probably as an NFL quarterback, which would be too bad because outside of injuries, he has been a fantastic guy under center, especially once he got out of Cincinnati. But there's going to be quite a few teams that are in the market for a quarterback next year, especially depending on how they finish the season this year. If Jacksonville gets to the playoffs and it was a fourth quarter comeback that was needed and Bortles wasn't the guy to do it, guarantee you they're looking for a new quarterback next year. Arizona's probably already trying to evaluate who they could possibly scoop up next year if they want to draft or look to free agency. But it's the kind of situation right now where one piece in this whole thing is going to have to fall before the rest of them do. And I think that may have been the Garoppolo signing in San Francisco. Whether they keep him or not, this team is not exactly the best environment to show off potential trade bait. So I kind of worry if that was their grand plan this whole time.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting about the whole situation. And Richard, that a few weeks ago, we got to cover the Redskin 49ers game. And when we were in there, we had a question in the room for Kirk Cousins was they asked him about being around Shanahan and everything like that. And, they asked him a few questions about Shanahan. He used a nickname that they called Shanahan when he was there with Washington. And you can see that, between Shanahan and Cousins, when they both were in the press conference room, at different times, they both seem uncomfortable talking about it. And it seems like they want to just get it past them. And that's why my heart is starting to believe that neither one of them, I don't think he will be there based off of that. Maybe just starting to get a vibe. Maybe they were trying to throw people off the trail. I don't know. But I think the interesting thing with Cousins is that the Redskins offered him $53 million in the offseason. But in my opinion, it was too little too late because the disrespect that the Redskins have thrown Cousins' way for the last, 2.5 years since he's taken over is ridiculous. He's been, if you look statistically, he's been the best completion, percentage quarterback in the league the last 2 years. At one point during this season, he had the best quarterback rating in the league up to 2 weeks ago. So, even with receivers like Terrell Pryor and Ryan Grant and guys like that, his tight ends are his security blanket. Most of his work comes from, giving it to the tight ends. And then Jordan Reed's injured all the time. So somehow, some way, he's still, playing at a high level with these guys, and to me, it's interesting. The Redskins better figure something out because I think he's going to leave because of the disrespect he's gotten over the last few years. But that's just my opinion. It's going to take a lot of money for Washington to keep him. Yeah,
and I think Cousins would be a good fit in Arizona too. Arizona is like playoff ready if they just had some consistency, especially at out of their quarterback play, because when Palmer's on, he's on, but when he's off, it's terrible. And then of course their defense hasn't played up to the names that you would see on that depth chart as far as their roster goes. So not sure how deep the problems go in Arizona. I've heard that this is Arians' last year in Arizona. So that being said, everything that we've discussed, what's the one move that you would like to see happen this offseason, whether it be player, coach, front office, somebody drafts somebody? Like, what's the one big turning point that you see to make a very interesting 2018 season?
Well, I'm going to throw real quick my personal one out there. They got to get rid of Don Capers. I'm sorry. Green Bay, whatever they do, they just I don't care what they do. It's time. I want a young, energetic guy. If not that, I'll take Wade Phillips. I don't know how they steal him from L.A. Make it happen. But to see what Sean McVay has been able to do in L.A., and turning Jared Goff into Kirk Cousins 2.0, if I dare say that, I would like maybe even to get a young coach out there that can bring something different on that end. Now, the move that I'd like to see, I would probably say I would like to see. Oh, this is a tough one. You got me on this one, Rich. I'll be honest with you. I probably will say I'd like to see. I'm going to be probably more interested in anything than where will Kirk Cousins end up at, because, I don't think he's going to play for a team that's going to be a slouch. I think Kirk Cousins is one of those guys that want to win. He wants to be the leader. He wants to be the unquestioned leader of a team. That's probably going to be the one that I'm the most interested in. This offseason, besides any Packer moves, and Green Bay finding the way to sign Devontae Adams. Those type of things. But I don't know. I will be interested to see how, your guys, the 49ers, take on this next year. I think, it may be a little bit rough. It has been rough at times for them. I want to see how they maybe rebuild that offensive line. I think, C.J. Beathard has been – I don't think he's been horrible. I just think that the poor guy's running for his life.
Yeah, he's attacking dummy. I got into a full-on Twitter argument with a guy that said that he was terrible. I was like, he's a rookie QB, 4 starts, and he's behind the worst offensive line in football.
I mean, like I said, when I was there, I saw him run. And that was his first game that he actually got some, playing time. It was in that 49ers Redskins game. And from that point on, I've seen him run. The Arizona game, he was on the move. Even the one where he took the hit, he was, he went slide and he got tagged in that. Yeah. So I'm interested to see what you guys do, and really interested in Cleveland, because I don't know how you feel, but I felt like Cleveland was going to have a great year. I had Cleveland going at least 6-10 this year. I thought they would make some huge strides, and they just haven't.
See,
what are they going to do
with
that quarterback?
Because that's Cleveland, man. The more confidence that you vote for them, the more they disappoint you.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's the thing that bothered me the most. Is I kept thinking, okay, look, they drafted extremely well, and I still think they drafted well. You look at their young guys, except for maybe Kaiser, but I think that's because Kaiser got thrown to the wolves. But even Myles Garrett, he's come in, he's already got 4 sacks. He's only played 2 or 3 games. Njoku, their other first-round pick, he's been doing all right at the position. I mean, if you can get a quarterback to actually throw him the ball, and if they're going to keep Hugh Jackson or not. It seems like the Browns still have turmoil. Sasha Brown, they said that he sabotaged the trade to get A.J. McCarron, and Hugh Jackson wanted A.J. McCarron. If that's the case, the Browns just can't keep it together when it comes to being civil. And that makes me worry.
Yeah. And so the last question that I've got for you here, and I know that it's one that you don't want to answer, but it's one that I felt was appropriate for this particular situation. The 2017 regular season concludes. Minnesota gets one of the top 2 seeds, a first-round bye. Bridgewater comes back. He plays good, but not great. At the end of the season, now we're starting to talk about planning for the future, and a lot of what made Minnesota so good without a quarterback is still there in place for 2018. Does Rodgers look to Minnesota?
Oh, geez. Oh, God. I pray not. I don't need that part. I'm going to tell you what, man. I remember when I found out that Brett, when he went to the Jets, I was cool with it. I was like, okay, he went to the Jets. We're starting over, okay. And I was fine with it. But I was not fine when he went to Minnesota, because I knew he was trying to stick it to the Packers. I don't think Aaron will go the same route unless he feels like he's being pressed out. I don't think he will be the Minnesota quarterback next year. But that's another place that you could see a Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
That's another place that you could see a possible Andrew Luck. Personally, I would like to see a Kirk Cousins there. Personally, I don't want to see him there. But if I had to, not think on the fan front and think of it as a non-Packers fan of it, it would be good. It would be a great move for him. They got decent running backs. They have a fantastic young defense, and Mike Zimmer knows how to coach him up there in Minnesota. And he's got 2 great receivers in Diggs and Thielen, and you got Kyle Rudolph. It would be, besides Arizona, that's a great spot for him.
Yeah.
But the only thing that scares me about Minnesota is that turf. You go back and look at it. Some big names have gotten hurt on that turf since they've opened the stadium. AP got hurt on the turf. I believe Bridgewater got hurt on the turf, if not a little bit before then. And then, Sam Bradford, he just got hurt. And then you also look at, oh my goodness, I can't think of my man's name. Oh, Aaron Rodgers, of course. He gets hurt on the turf. So I would be very skeptical of that new turf up there in Minnesota. It's been kind of a sticking point for me. I've been noticing that.
All right, well, he is Darrell Lee Owens of the Legacy Makers Sports Podcast, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk some football here on the Fan Show. But, man, I'll look forward to having you on again soon. You have a good show this week.
Hey, thank you, man. Same here. I'm going to have to get you on the show soon, my friend.
Hey, no problem. You just let me know when.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, take care, man.
All right, bye-bye.
Big thank you to Mr. Darrell Lee Owens of the Legacy Makers Sports Network, and that is going to do it for this Wednesday edition of the Fan Show. I know there was no Fantasy Wednesday today, postponed till tomorrow, but of course, as always, since the waiver wire is a Tuesday night thing, Wednesday, well, what do I do? You've got Brandon Raper of Team Fan Show, who is giving out some of the best fantasy advice all season long. His articles are up every Tuesday. Plenty of time to read, review, and reflect and see what you want to do. You can even tweet at him questions. I've seen a lot of people do that lately. He's been on fire. His tight end picks have been awesome. He is the Tight End Whisperer. That is available at thefanshow.com, your home base for all things football and nonsense. Don't forget, if you like the podcast version of the show, you can subscribe iTunes, SoundCloud, as well as follow on iHeartRadio. And if you enjoy the live version of the Fan Show, that is every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, live on Spreaker.com and thefanshow.com, and then replays of the show play in their entirety on WBLZ Sports the next day. And of course, there is the YouTube channel. It's not a podcast form, but it is the entire episode on YouTube. There's some interviews on there, as well as my most recent one from my time at Eastern Washington University. I'd like to thank the good people out there for having me and hosting me, and it was a great time. I wish they would have got the win, but it was still great to be an Eagle again like I was so many years ago. So go and check that out, the YouTube channel. It is The Fan Show, and that's where you can follow me on Snapchat and Instagram, The Fan Show. Follow me on Twitter at FanShowOfficial, and give the Facebook page a like. It's me and the Idaho Horseman who is going to be first to get to 1,000 likes. Looks like them. I fell way behind somehow, so help me out. Go to Facebook.com/FanShowOfficial and click the like button if you haven't done it already. But we'll be back tomorrow. We'll do the list, the Butt Fumble Award, and of course some fantasy talk. Chris Cope, comedian, he will be on the show tomorrow night. So we've got a lot of ground to make up for since we missed last night, but so far so good. So I thank you all once again for tuning in this evening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow night. Until then, Fan Nation, best of luck to you and yours. Go Niners, and remember, it's all fun and games until you butt fumble. Good night, folks.
Do you remember the time that Mark Sanchez ran into his player's butt? That was funny sports.
Thank you for having me on the show, man. I love the Fan Show.